The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the King. Pull up a chair and join WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler and Glenn Moore. Enjoy.
It's our 1-year anniversary show.
Holy mackerel.
On Dinner with the King. It's been 1 year this week that we started the podcast, and here we are, over 48 episodes of the show. I'm Glenn Moore, joined here by WWE Hall of Famer, the man of the hour, the man that you come to listen to each and every week, Jerry the King Lawler. King, it's been 1 year since we started the podcast. A lot of great classic clips that we have, a few great guests on the show. It's been a hell of a year for the show.
Yeah, it has, and man, time flies when you're living, doesn't it? I mean, it's just whizzed right by. And of course, here we are once again at the Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company, the restaurant out here on Germantown Parkway here in Memphis, and we're coming up this. It's simultaneous that this is happening. You know, this Sunday is that we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of our barbecue store here.
Yeah, 1 year for that. So, yeah, time flies. I feel like it's, well, it has been a year, but, you're talking about, you're opening the barbecue, the podcast will have it, seem like we're doing it from the barbecue restaurant for those who are in on the secret. But, yeah, it's been a great year for the podcast. And like you said, it has flown by these 40-plus episodes.
Now, of course, this, as everyone's listening, this coming Sunday is March the 11th. That's the day we picked out to kind of celebrate the event here at the barbecue restaurant. We're going to have we're going to have a bunch of wrestlers out here. We're going to have live wrestling matches. We're going to start the celebration at 12 noon. We're going to have all kind of things going on. A lot of fun out here. But we're going to have some live wrestling matches that afternoon between 12 and 5. And it's going to be a big day. So we got a big celebration planned for here at the restaurant. What do we have planned to celebrate our 1-year anniversary here on the podcast?
Well, I figured we don't have a special guest or anything for the show, but, we're going to do
Why not? What's up with that?
You don't like guests, Jerry.
I know, but, on this special day, special podcast, I would have made an exception.
Well, we got to keep it old.
No, you know what?
Keep it old school.
You shouldn't say that. Because I do like guests. I've enjoyed every single guest that we've had on, with the exception of maybe Kenny Bolin. Ooh. But other than that, I like guests. I just don't like putting the pressure on them to come and be on the show with us. That's the part I don't like asking guests to be on. But I love having guests. I mean, everybody that we've had has been awesome.
Yeah. But Cody Rhodes, we had Bret Hart, we had, Jeff Jarrett, Kenny Bolin. We had a whole list of
Jim Cornette was
Jim Cornette, Terry Funk.
Oh my gosh,
was a great. Dr. Michael Sampson was on the show as well.
I could just hear Terry Funk being on here today. How did you make it a year, Lawler? You egg sucking dog. But you should have had a special guest. You should have surprised me today.
No, I want to show appreciation to all the listeners. How about that? All over the world, because we get.
That's a cop out.
Well, come on, we got to show appreciation to people who listen to the show each and every week, and all.
You know what you just said. You know what you just said there a minute ago. You said all over the world, and that made me think that we spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in Memphis, because that's where we are, and that's my hometown, and that's where most of the wrestling shows that I do are sort of around this area or associated, related to Memphis. And we're talking about the barbecue restaurant anniversary coming up this Sunday. But then all of a sudden I'll get a tweet. You ask the listeners to tweet us where you're listening from and what you're doing while you're listening. And get a tweet the other day. The guys said, "Hey, I'm listening over here in Seoul, South Korea." Wow. And I'm thinking, oh man, I bet he don't care two flips about us talking about our barbecue restaurant in Memphis when he's in Seoul, South Korea.
But I mean, there's a lot of people who listen to the show that are in the area of Memphis that do visit the barbecue restaurant. They do visit your bar and grill on Beale Street. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who listen to Memphis, but also when I look at the stats and the geography of the show, I mean, we have people all over China to India, to the UK, to South America, to Canada. I mean, all over the world, people are tuning in to the podcast each and every week. I mean, we have people in Iraq listen to the show.
That is amazing.
So,
and you know what? Speaking of the bar and grill, just this past Friday night, we opened up our VIP room downstairs and had the entire East Carolina Pirates basketball team there. Every player, the head coach, the coaching staff, the broadcast radio guys, the entire East Carolina basketball team came and had dinner before they played the Memphis Tigers the following day this past weekend here in Memphis. And they and several of the guys, listened to the podcast on there. So I mean, that's how they knew, to come into the club on Beale Street. So yeah, people are listening all over the place, I guess.
You guess. Come on.
I guess.
People want to hear from the king. But yeah, but you do post a photo if you haven't already. Post a photo. We're listening to the show this week. If you're cleaning a bathroom or doing laundry or on the beach or driving around, or
you're just begging for some beach photos, aren't you?
Or if you're hanging out with your girlfriend,
really pretty girl on the beach. Some really pretty girl's got to send a picture of her on the beach listening to the podcast.
Well, we had a person, a male, tweet a photo saying, "Just want to let you guys know, ridiculously good-looking men listen to the podcast as well." Did you see that photo?
Yes, I did see that.
So,
who was he talking about? It's surely not himself, right?
Wow.
No, he was a nice-looking guy.
He was. Well, actually, someone responded and said, "Well, we're waiting. Who is it?"
See?
So, but no, but do tweet at us at Dinner with King, at Glenn Moore CLE, and at Jerry Lawler. Let us know where you're listening to the podcast this week. If you're out and about, I'm sure we'll get more of a selection of different photos once the weather warms up around the country. So this is our 1 year anniversary.
You're just really begging for a beach photo, aren't you?
I mean, someone sent me a beach photo.
Really?
I mean, there was a picture of a beach.
Did you post it? I didn't see it.
I think I retweeted it. I think it was Bam Bam Bundy.
Bam Bam Bundy.
So I think it was him that posted down south, down yonder. But this week, since the last week's episode got such a great reaction with the Do You Remember about Tojo Yamamoto, stories about him, about Randy Hales. People love to hear in the Memphis stories. So we're going to continue that this week. And I have some topics to talk about. And we're finally going to get to why the USWA stopped doing studio shows, live studio shows. We're going to get to that story a little bit shortly. But King.
That's a long story, I want to tell you right now. That is a long story.
Well, we're just going to do the part why they stopped doing the live in studio shows. I mean, there's a simple answer for that, but you don't have to go through the whole show. We can save that for a show. We keep talking about saving that, but we never get around to it.
Yeah, you're right.
So just this, you can give a condensed
version.
There you go. There you go. A little teaser for the main, because you're right. It's a very long, complicated answer to a question, but we're going to keep it condensed this week. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about fans wanting to fight Jerry Lawler in the parking lot at shows.
What?
Fans that are coming at you. Yeah, I mean,
that's one of the questions that people want to know if I remember that or what.
Do you remember King? Fans wanting to meet you in the parking lot to actually go to fisticuffs with you.
Dude.
We're going to talk about some of the biggest moments in Memphis wrestling that you had the most heat with the fans, if you remember that, King. And I was watching some Global Wrestling Federation matches this morning when the USWA, I think you were down in Texas, you were facing against Eddie Gilbert, and a man popped up that was actually wrestling, that I know as a manager as Paul Bear, but Percy Pringle was actually wrestling and teaming with, I know you never guess it, King. Guess who Percy Pringle's tag team partner was?
Well, first of all, let me say, I didn't realize, no, I guess I did, that Percy did wrestle before he started managing. No, I think he did. He did both, but he did wrestle sometimes. Yeah. But of course, as you said, Percy Pringle was the first name before he became Paul Bearer.
Correct.
And the manager of The Undertaker up in the WWE. But Percy Pringle, yeah, he did wrestle a lot while I was down there in Texas. Who was he partnering with that you're talking about?
Well, Stunning Steve Austin, which would go to be known as Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, my goodness.
So you have Stone Cold Steve Austin teaming with Paul Bearer in the early 90s and GWF. It was a main event. Also, there was an 8-man Texas tag team match that Percy Pringle and I think Bill Dundee was a part of. We had Stunning Steve Austin. So you have all these different characters, these different guys in this match. So I wanted to bring up Paul Bearer, aka Percy Pringle.
Now, let me ask you this, and then we'll go back to Paul Bearer. But where were you watching that?
On the WWE Network.
Also, now the WWE Network has. You're right. They've gotten their hands on just about every territory's tape library, and so now you can watch some of the old USWA stuff on there, right?
Yeah, some of the USWA. And
trust me, that right there is there's a good enough reason to get the network. I mean, we had such a great talent back there in the USWA, and I think what you're talking about there mostly are the matches from the Sportatorium in Texas. I mean, an all-time one of the great and most famous wrestling venues in the country. But the Von Erichs, Fritz Von Erich and his sons, they ruled that Texas area. The Sportatorium there in Dallas was their home, and so our Memphis Wrestling, Jerry Jarrett and I, kind of formed a hookup there with them, and we started up the USWA, the combination of our territory, our CWA, and theirs was world class wrestling, and we started up this new company, USWA, and man, there's some great matches down at the Sportatorium, and those are mostly all on the network now.
Yeah, there was a main event, Jerry Lawler's Terry Funk.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, man. I was the USWA champion, and we had already had that unified title match with Kerry Von Erich, and it was some great stuff there.
Yeah, Funk had the title, and he was walking out to the ring, and there was cops that were escorting the guy because the aisle, walking down the aisle, the fans were kind of close to the guys coming out, and Funk was being escorted by cops, and the cop kind of grabbed Funk's arm to lead him to the ring, and Funk turned around really quick, yanked his arm away from the cop, and started to charge with the cop a little bit, an actual police officer. And then Funk threw a chair at the camera. I mean, Funk is just terrific.
He was the greatest.
Yeah, and then
still is. I don't know how you say was. I mean, he still is.
Yeah. So a lot of those matches are on the WB Network. Well,
Terry Funk can do more just walking to and from the ring. He doesn't even. He puts on a great show just walking to and from the ring. You forget about the match. I mean, that's enough entertainment that this guy can do just going to and from the match.
Well, isn't that 85% of wrestling is what you can do on the mic and showmanship and your character? And I mean,
yeah. If you include what you can do on the mic, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say. We've said this so many times before. I think that's probably, at least this is just my opinion, but I think what you can do on the mic is more important than what you can do in the ring.
Right.
I think that's what really separates the guys and makes a difference in whether you're just a mid-card guy, opening match guy, or a main event guy is how you can get the fans to buy into what you're doing and what your character or your person, whatever it is you're selling to them. I mean, that's just the difference. I've seen a lot of wrestlers who are not that great at actual wrestling in-ring ability, but they're tremendous, on a microphone, and they will 99% of the time do better and be more successful than a wrestler who is fantastic in the ring and not good on the microphone.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we're talking about Paul Bearer a little bit, but before we get into, do you remember, we're going to get into some relevant topics going on in wrestling. And King, here's one that kind of, you do commentary. Fans, when they get bored, they start chanting random things. They start chanting at the commentators. They start chanting for you. I remember JBL or Michael Cole. But now, WWE.
I was always embarrassed if something. I was embarrassed for the wrestlers in the ring.
Yeah.
If when JR and I were doing commentary, if they started chanting for JR and I, and that did happen a lot, and I hated it. Not that I didn't appreciate it, but I hated it for the wrestlers in the ring because it meant, I know it made them feel like, their match was not, I don't know, boring, not necessarily boring, but that the people were more concerned with something other than what was going on in the ring for them to do a chant or something like that. And I always hated when the fans did that. Not that I didn't appreciate it, but I felt bad for the guys in the ring while that happened.
Could you imagine if Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee were wrestling and the fans of Memphis were chanting for Lance Russell? I mean, Lance Russell is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but I'm saying they're chanting for the announcer or chanting for someone else.
Yeah, no, that never happened.
Right.
That never happened. Never. That's something that has changed with society. It's so funny, back in that era, when Bill Dundee and I were going against each other down in Memphis, the fans, I don't know, I guess it was just a different feeling or a different attitude that the fans had in that day and time. They were there as fans to watch the show. And what has changed is over the years, the fans have become, they think they are part of the show as opposed to watching the show. And that's just, that's just the way society has changed. That's the way wrestling fans have changed. Nothing wrong with it, but that's why you get the chants and that sort of thing. It's because they want, the fans that go to the shows now want attention on themselves as much as they want to give attention to what's going on in the ring.
Like the WWE super fans.
Yeah, super fan.
Like Frank the Clown.
yeah. Or the sign guy.
Or Brock Lesnar guy.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar guy. Or what about like guy? I think when that really, I think what started to change was the wave. Remember when what year would you think the wave started?
I don't know, but I hate the wave for sporting events, let alone wrestling events.
I know, but I believe that was the first time that the fans wanted to be a part of the show.
Yeah.
When they started the wave, and then it went from there to just all sorts of things. Like I understand, is the WWE going to ban beach balls?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. WWE is going to ban beach balls and iPads.
Yeah, iPads. I don't know about that, but I mean, I can understand. The beach balls. That's simply a thing where the people, they want to make a beach ball or themselves hitting a beach ball around the audience is, more. Not that it's certainly not more exciting, but more entertaining or more important than what's going on in the ring. So I can understand that. Would be just like chanting for the announcers or something when the match is going on. It's got to be disconcerting to the wrestlers. You're in there working and you're trying to get a response from the fans, and then all of a sudden you hear a big cheer or something. You think, well, wait a minute, I didn't even do anything, and all of a sudden you look out there and it's because a beach ball is flying around in the audience. That's not, I gotta agree. I don't know I don't know how you're going to ban a beach ball. You bring a beach ball in, uninflated rather, in your pocket. I mean, what are you going to go through a beach ball detector now or what?
Sir, you have a beach ball.
Those will be popping up at every airport. But
sir, is that you or is that a beach ball in your pocket?
Yeah, you're just glad to see me. Wow.
But no, if I was a guy in a crowd.
Wait. What'd you say about iPads? They're going to ban iPads?
Yeah, well, they don't want people recording the stuff, so.
Well, I can understand that as well, but you record on an iPad?
I guess people use dads use iPads. I see old people with big iPads taking video. I'm like, do you realize you can get better video quality with your little phone? Why do you take around your iPad? That's a whole discussion for another day. But I mean, when you guys were getting, chants for you and JR and JBL, or even Michael Cole got some chants, were you guys instructed not to acknowledge the crowd?
No, never.
Okay.
Never.
Well,
that's and that's the cool thing about WWE. I do understand them not wanting beach balls flying around in there, but they've never really tried to direct or try to tell anybody not to chant anything. That's not ever been. I'm not saying that's not ever been a concern or that somebody didn't dislike a certain chant or whatever. But no, that's never been discouraged.
Well, yeah, I'm saying acknowledge, wave or. I'm sure you guys are embarrassed, but still, hey, it's cool to get my name chanted during.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, and I wasn't. it was like if they started chanting Jerry, that sort of thing. No, I was like I said, I just felt bad for the guys in the ring because I know that's who they feel like. Well, they must not care much about what we're doing here if they're with those other kind of chants.
Yeah. So no beach balls at WrestleMania, no beach ball mania.
But look at all the chants. I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately is a chant that's got started that they probably weren't happy with at first, but now it's become it's just become his thing. It's like Kurt Angle, with the "You Suck" chant.
Yeah.
But now everybody loves him, but they still do the "You Suck" chant.
Well, there's one chant that I really don't like, and that's the chant of "You deserve it."
You deserve it. I don't even remember hearing that.
People, yeah, when someone like an underdog, wins a title or wins a big match, they chant "You deserve it," like they deserve to be handed something, like, oh, you deserve to win the title, or I don't like that, or you still got it. Like I never lost it.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I get that. I still got the I get the "You still got it" chant. I just always say, yeah, I still got it, but the only trouble is now nobody wants it. Oh, yeah, feel bad about that. But hey, I'll be honest with you. One chant that I never really liked is the "This is awesome."
Come on.
I know that they. It's like, I don't know. Like everything else is not, but all of a sudden this is. I'm just not a big chant. I'm not a big chant guy. I don't mind the name chants. That's okay, but you don't have to give me a chant during the match.
But no more beach balls, no more iPads. They want you to focus on what's going on in the ring and not having beach balls all over the place, people. All right?
Yeah.
So, King, no beach balls at WrestleMania, all right?
I'd never bring a beach ball to WrestleMania. Never.
Other news tidbits before we get to Do You Remember? Jeff Hardy and Mick Foley are going to donate their brains for concussion research after they pass away.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
See, if I was still doing the commentary, I would say about Mick Foley, I would say, hey, I thought you had to have a brain to donate a brain. But I'm not doing the commentary right now. So, no, that, you know what, that is.
I mean, it's good for research.
I guess, but I can't even comprehend making that kind of a decision. That I'm saying I'm going to let them slice my skull open and take my brain out and, do whatever it is they do with it. I guess they got to slice it all up and everything, right?
Yeah, do a lot of testing and probing and just a lot of research with the brain because, obviously Mick Foley has taken a lot of chair shots during his career. Even Jeff Hardy, too. Both these guys have a lot of injuries during their career. So, I mean, it's great for the future concussion research. But, even when I die, I don't want to give any parts of my body away. I'm selfish. I want to keep everything.
You want to stay intact just in case.
Well, not even just in case. I don't know. I'd rather have everything, buried with me. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's we certainly don't want to get into any kind of religious discussion here or anything, but I think there would be some people that think that, someday everybody will be, you'll be not risen or rise up out of the grave on Judgment Day and all of that sort of stuff. And can you imagine popping back up and have no brain?
Well, I mean, don't you go back to the state that you're like your former state? Like if you died, like if you died of a car accident and you lost an arm, when you come back, I mean, that arm is back, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Nobody knows. That's where the great mystery of life. That's why I'm saying, in your case, do you want to just say, just in case, I want all my parts there, or are you just saying that because you just don't want to have the thought of having your body sliced up and cut on and everything after you die?
Just want to have everything with me when I get buried.
What about cremation? What do you believe there?
I mean, I don't want to mind being cremated, only if I could be sprinkled on a favorite spot of mine, whatever that place may be.
What part of the female anatomy would that be?
God, no.
You're so bad.
Come on, there's kids around, Jerry.
Oh, I know. I'm just kidding.
Right. But no, that's. Would you ever do that? You know, if someone approached you like, "Hey, Jerry, you've had a 50+ year career of wrestling. Would you mind donating your brain to science?"
And I think we talked a little bit about this. I don't think I've ever had a concussion.
No, I'm pretty sure you've had.
Well, how would you? What do you mean? How could you say? If I'm saying, and I'm the guy that did it and went through all this 45 years of in the ring action, and I'm saying I don't think I've ever had a concussion. How can you say that? Oh, I'm pretty sure you have.
Because you wrestled for 40+ years. You wrestled during an era that concussions were not even talked about, or let alone, oh man, I blanked out. You could have had like a blackout quickly, just taking.
I would remember if I had blackouts. I've never had blackouts. I've never even had I've never even get headaches.
Okay, so you're telling me that you can remember if you had a concussion way back in the early '80s. I mean, you can remember that?
Yeah, yes. I don't remember having one, so I can remember not having one.
I don't think you can.
I mean, I think I would remember if I had them.
So you never like blacked out or had this dizzy
never.
from taking a bump or anything?
Never. No.
Wow. And you don't get headaches?
Nope.
So I think your brain would be a perfect candidate then.
Well, I don't care. I'm not going to cut my brain out of my head and slice it up for somebody else. And all they could, what could they do if they slice my brain up and go, well, look at this. Now here's a brain that didn't ever get concussed.
Yeah, here's a guy that 40+ years in the business, and a lot of other guys have brains that are looking like whatever they look like when you get concussed. And here's a guy that never had a concussion. Look at his brain. And they'll be like, okay, we'll put it back.
Okay. Yeah. Now let's put it back.
Let's put it back.
And then the next thing you know, there's a little Igor, Dr. Frankenstein, working on me.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. But yeah, so Hardy and Foley are going to donate their brain.
Who did you get the brain from? I don't know. It was somebody named Abby. Abby Normal. Remember that? Young Frankenstein?
Yeah, that's a great movie. Could you imagine your brain going into someone else's body? Jerry Lawler, I feel bad for that body.
You're bringing back all kind of memories. The Three Stooges episode when they're going to put Curly's brain into a gorilla's body. or maybe vice versa. I don't know which.
Well, I feel bad for that person getting your brain.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
What do you mean by that now?
I'm just moving on.
We don't
moving on.
But in other words, Mick Foley, that's admirable, I guess. If they obviously feel like they're going to be helping somebody down the road, and that possibly will. But I don't know what I need to donate my vocal cords. There's something wrong with them. But I don't know what working or looking at somebody's brain that is already, passed away. I don't know how that's going to help anything in the future, other than you could say, and especially in the case of wrestlers, what are you going to do differently? Are you going to change the whole? You're going to change the whole face of the business to say, oh, you can't ever touch anybody's head in wrestling in any kind of way? That just it wouldn't be the same business anymore.
Well, you can't.
I don't know. I'm one of those guys that feel like that whole concussion thing is a part of political correctness, and it's a part of the blame society that we have become. Everything that happens has to be blamed on something. I still feel like individuals should take responsibility for things they do. Hey, you want to get into wrestling? You got to realize, or football, or anything where your head is going to get hit, boxing, whatever it is, you got to realize that's a risk I'm taking. I might get a concussion. If you don't want to take that risk, if you don't want to ever have to worry about a concussion, don't get into wrestling or boxing or football or any sport where you're going to, have that risk. So, it's and our whole society has become that way now. No individual takes responsibility for what they do. Everything that happens to anybody or everything that somebody does has to be blamed on something or somebody else. I hate that. I hate that we've become that kind of society.
So do you think it was wrong for WWE to, stop the chair shots to the head? You can't do that anymore. You can't do a pile driver anymore.
Yeah, I do. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just me though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, a chair shot to the head. In reality, that's if that's not supposed to be a part of wrestling, and it was used on occasion when things just totally got out of hand. I mean, chairs are not supposed to, well, except maybe table, ladder, and chairs match. But just there's certain things that I really don't agree. I really don't agree with the pile driver thing. I mean, you can get hurt with almost every single move that the guys do nowadays. The pile driver, if you get hurt with a pile driver, it's only because of a mistake. And if you get a mistake made on any kind of move that's done these days, you're going to get hurt, and sometimes seriously. So, I don't necessarily agree with that's going to keep anybody from getting a concussion.
There's some matches like, remember The Rock and Mankind, and Mankind was handcuffed with hands behind his back, and The Rock just hit Mankind over the head, 10 to 15 times with a chair shot in a single match. I mean, that's not wrestling.
No, it's not. But you know what? I'm sure that was the Mick's idea.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not anybody in the WWE that's ever going to come to somebody and say, hey, I want you to get hit over the head 15 times with a chair. Yeah. That ain't going to happen. Never did happen. That was Mick's idea. And in that case, that's where I say, that you take personal responsibility. You obviously wanted to do that. So if you should say, hey, that was a risk that I took, and I'm willing to pay the price.
I mean, it's a great spectacle to see that. I mean, to see someone get hit
over the head 15 times with a chair. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that made Mick famous.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think Mick is one of those guys that's out front complaining about the fact that he got concussions. He's not blaming anybody. I think Mick will be the first one to tell you that, hey, I did what I did. And I'm accepting the responsibility. But unfortunately, it's one of those situations where I'm sure that at the time when Mick was doing that, he wasn't thinking about the future. He wasn't thinking about 10 or 15 years from now, will I be, will I be able to remember my kids' names or things like that? That's just something that unfortunately athletes especially don't have a tendency to not think about the future. You think you're invincible. You think you're invulnerable. You're like Superman. Nothing's going to hurt you. And nothing's going to have a lasting effect on you.
Yeah. It's, a lot more safe spots for wrestlers nowadays than it was back in the classic era of professional wrestling, because now it's all about concussions and people not getting hurt, but it's taken away from the actual, I think, real.
You know what? I don't agree with you at all.
No?
I think with all of these different moves that the guys do, the flying in and out of the ring.
Yeah.
I think that's much more dangerous than the way we used to do it, than the way the matches were, back in the day, old school type stuff. Yeah. I think the matches and all the high spots and that sort, I think much more dangerous today than it was in the past.
You guys got, well, I mean, yeah, I agree, but there's more of like doing a suicide dive to the outside of the ring, guys, clipping the rope, and then going head first, hitting the ground and missing the guy completely. Just stuff like that is not really necessary to tell a story.
Well, I mean, you and I don't think that it's necessary because we were brought up in a different way of telling the story. The business has evolved or changed as society has. Everything's got to be speeded up. Everything's got to be faster paced. More is better. And so, they think the more of those kind of dangerous looking moves that they can put in a match, the better the match is. You and I don't necessarily agree with that way of thinking, but that's just the way the business has changed. And consequently, I think it is more dangerous today than it was.
Well, we'll see if how it evolves in the future. How wrestling changes when the higher ups take a look at these moves and say, "Well, we shouldn't do that move anymore," or "Well, we shouldn't do a DDT anymore because someone might get hurt."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did a little show this past Saturday. These guys have been calling me up, and I think you saw a tweet about it or something. What was one of the guys that I wrestled or worked against this Saturday?
DJ
Z.
Saturday.
DJ Z.
DJ Z.
And it's funny. As we were doing the introductions in the ring, very small little venue here in Memphis. I think it's just a bunch of guys who are from Memphis, and I used to look at it as it's like these guys are almost, pretending to be wrestlers. It's a bunch of guys who've got a little money and they put it together. They find themselves a little venue and they want so bad to be wrestlers that they have this venue and they have a building, they got a ring, and they get a group of wrestlers together and they put on shows. They don't have money to go out and advertise the shows, and they don't even have a venue big enough to make it worth advertising the show. But these guys called me up and they said, we have our little shows every Saturday, and it's almost like nobody but their intimate little gathering knows that they have these shows. And so I went over there simply because, to be perfectly honest with you, they said, it'll take about 10 or 15 minutes, and you'll make $1,500 just for showing up for 15 minutes.
Wow.
and having this little match, right? And so it was like within 5 miles of my house. So I said, okay, I'll come and do it. So then I get over there, and there's this what's DOG? What is it? DOJ?
DJ Z.
DJ Z. Anyway, yeah, he was one of the guys, and you said he had wrestled where?
TNA.
Okay.
Mainly. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one of the things I said. When the guy was introducing him, and he said, "This is
DJ Z."
This is DJ. Let me write that down right here on my napkin. This is DJ Z, and he was in the corner of actually the guy that I was wrestling. The guy that I was wrestling was dressed up like a pharaoh, which was almost sort of stealing my king gimmick, But anyway, this DJ Z guy, the guy said, he wrestled. Who this is? He wrestled. And I said, this is DJ. They said, this is DJ Z. And I had a microphone. I said, I've never heard of him. And they said, well, he used to wrestle in TNA. And I said, oh, that's why I never heard of him. So anyway, it was just, a little, a funny thing. But what I was going to say was, and where this got off track, I don't know. But anyway, I was watching some of these guys before my match, and they were going out there doing the wildest, craziest looking stuff. I mean, so dangerous looking, because they're trying to emulate all the stuff, the dangerous looking stuff that they see on WWE. And it was just scary. And I could see how these guys it was almost like, watching, like we used to see these guys do the backyard wrestling, where just like, these guys are like Mick Foley used to do, diving off with an elbow drop off of the roof of his house and things like that. So, that kind of stuff that's like I said, what the business has evolved into, to where these guys do this really dangerous looking stuff because they think that's what you have to do to tell a story in a match these days.
It's crazy. And it seems like every indie show, I'm not sure when you go to these indie events, King, you watch the other matches, but it seems like every match they want to do all these high spots, and they all want to do all the flips and all the outside, jump to the outside stuff, because they see that and they want that instant reaction. But sometimes that's too much, and when every single match on the show has that,
absolutely,
it gets boring.
That's my biggest gripe with it. Is like you said, they start doing these things from the opening match. The hurricanranas and all these dives through the ropes and stuff like that. And then by the time the main event gets there, people have seen all of these same moves that they're going to see in the main event 4 or 5 times. And that's what makes it harder to make to tell a compelling story later on in the evening. It's just they see too much too soon. I mean, there was a time, and I realized that that's like something we wound up saying a lot here back in the day, or there was a time. But just in wrestling, the way it evolved, or the way it used to be, I mean, there was like a pecking order. The opening match was never designed to be as exciting as the main event was. It was laid out that way. You didn't. I mean, when I first started, you didn't even throw a punch in the opening match. You just went out there and did wrestling moves, wrestling holds, and that sort of thing. I mean, I can remember when guys would get in trouble if they threw a punch in the opening match. You saved the matches built to a crescendo at the main event at the end of the evening, but not anymore. Not today, and especially like you said in these indie shows, every guy that's on the show wants to do everything in his repertoire every time he gets in front of a crowd. So that's what happens.
I think an indie show, you have your one comedy match, you have one, flippy match, and then the rest of the matches are more traditional storytelling wrestling matches. So
I don't find that to be the case.
No, I mean no. That's what I would like as a fan.
Oh, that's what you would like, yeah.
Yeah, to watch. That's less flippy stuff, more ground and pound.
All right, Glenn, it's time for me to take a minute and talk about something new. It's, of course, it's one of our sponsors, but it's this thing that I'm about to talk about it could become revolutionary. Let me ask you this, Glenn. Do you have any problem, or has anybody ever told you that you have a problem snoring?
Yes, people have told me I snore a lot.
I know, because you stayed here at my house one time, and I could hear you from the other room. I could hear you in the guest room. Down in Lauren and I's bedroom.
What?
So,
no.
Yeah, yes, I'm serious. You snore a lot. Now, I never believed that I snore. But Lauren says I do. And so our new sponsor, and when we have a sponsor, I have to try this stuff out. I have to believe in this, or I'm not going to talk about it. Our new sponsor is called Z Quiet. And Z Quiet, it's like this revolutionary anti-snoring product, and it was created out of one of the just like mine, a family's need for peace and quiet. There's this couple, Dan and Trina Webster. I mean, apparently they were just desperate for a solution for Dan's snoring, and so they went to work on this, and they came up with this product called Z Quiet, and it's a simple solution. And it's snoring, of course, is a problem that's shared by millions of Americans. And the Z Quiet, I was skeptical when I got it, because, well, first of all, when you snore, you don't know if you snore or not. So you have to take somebody else's word for it when you're asleep, whether or not you snore anymore. And so this Z Quiet, first, let me explain what it is. It's made in the United States. It's a mouthpiece that uses soft, BPA-free material. It's comfortable. It's a comfortable, easy to use mouthpiece, and it's been helping people, cut down or stop their snoring for the past 10 years. And the instructions on it say you just pop it in when you go to bed, and it works immediately. And so that's what I did. I tried this thing, and I mean, I got to be honest with you. First, when I looked at it, I thought, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wear this at night, and I don't know if I'll be able to go to sleep with a mouthpiece in. But it was so comfortable. As soon as I put it in, didn't even realize it was there. And you could talk with it in. I haven't tried this yet, but it says you could even drink while wearing Z Quiet. But it works. At least Lauren says it worked for me. The simple principle is that the little mouthpiece moves your lower jaw slightly forward, and it opens the airway, and it prevents vibrations that cause the snoring noise. So they have this deal where you can try it. If you have a problem with snoring, you can try Z Quiet with confidence. They have a 30-night better sleep guarantee. And so if it doesn't work for you, Z Quiet will give you your money back. And so here's what I'm telling you to do. If you have a problem with snoring, it's time to kick snoring out of the bed. You can sleep quiet with Z Quiet. And listen to this. Right now, Z Quiet is offering an exclusive 25% discount just for my listeners. So here's all you got to do. Go to buyzquiet.com. That's BUYZQUIET.com and enter the promo code KING. And again, that's buyzquiet.com and enter promo code KING, and you're going to get 25% off discount.
Okay, let's get into Do You Remember? And this time...
Look, you're telling me how many concussions I've had over the years. Now you're going to ask me, do I remember something?
Well, you got CRS.
Oh, okay.
Just like Jeff Jarrett. But no, the last week's show, Do You Remember, got a ton of great feedback. So I figure we'll continue this with some more topics. So we have a few topics here. And this first one ties into breaking news that happened a few days ago with the WWE. King, do you remember Harley Davidson?
Of course I do. I just watched one of our music videos on him yesterday.
Yeah.
It just came up. Harley Davidson was, of course, a guy that went on to become Hillbilly Jim, who has just now been announced as going to be one of this year's inductees in the WWE Hall of Fame. And he's from Kentucky, and this guy came down to Memphis to get started in wrestling. A big old guy, and I came up with he had this like sort of a biker looking gimmick, and so I came up with the name for him. I said, let's just call him Harley, for sort of from Harley Race. And they said, what about the last name? I said, well, let's say his last name is Davidson, because I had a couple guys on my softball team. Their last name was Davidson, so that's those are two real names. And then we'll have him. He's the biker gimmick, the Harley Davidson. So yeah, he started wrestling for us, and I think if I remember right, we might have had him go out to the ring a couple of times on like one of those little bitty mini bikes. Mm-hmm. And of course, you realize how big Hillbilly Jim is and everything. But so we went out and bought him. We bought him this real nice leather jacket, an entire really legit biker outfit that cost us almost $1,000. I think it was really, really nice stuff and everything. And then we put him together with it was just like a total ripoff kind of tag team. We put him together with a guy we called not Dusty Rhodes, but Dirty Rhodes.
Roger Smith.
Roger Smith, who was also a great. I mean, Roger was a great wrestler. Roger went on to be, he did, every kind of tag team, the Assassins, and Roger worked for us for years, and different. Any gimmick you could come up with, Roger was right there to be a part of, But he worked for years for us, and then but we put them together as a tag team, Dirty Rhodes and Harley Davidson, and they got over really good for us for a while. We did music videos on the guys and everything. Yeah,
it's just Hillbilly Jim is great. He was in the Legends House on WWE Network, and he is just a great guy. He's got a great personality, and then he, I don't remember the exact sequence of how, who went up to the WWE first, probably Hillbilly Jim, I think. But anyway, then they took a guy that was one of my all-time favorite characters and one of my best friends. We started out at the same time. Well, maybe he started out a little bit before me, but down in Alabama, when I first got in the business, they sent me down to Alabama. It's like that was the Tennessee's developmental territory. They had a little area down there where you could go down and work every night of the week in small towns without having to make the long trips that we had up in the Tennessee territory. You'd be in like Montgomery, Alabama, Selma, Alabama, Anniston, Alabama, Gadsden, Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. All of these cities on a nightly and weekly basis, but they were all just really small towns, and you'd ply your trade down there before you were ready to come up to the big time, so to speak, up in the Memphis and Nashville territory. So that's where I first met this guy named Stan Frazier, who we started booking as Plowboy Frazier,
and it was just a big hillbilly gimmick. And then, of course, he went on to the WWE as Uncle Elmer. And, of course, Uncle Elmer and Hillbilly Jim were, two. And Uncle Elmer, of course, or Plowboy Frazier, he was huge. He was almost 7 feet tall. And he was just a great guy. But and I think his big claim to fame was he legitimately got married on WWE TV. You remember that?
I do not.
Yeah, it was a legitimate wedding. He actually got married on TV. Wow. Uncle Elmer. And so he and Hillbilly Jim were partners up there in the WWE, and they were both just great characters, and I think the reason they were such great characters as far as the hillbilly gimmick is because the character that they played was really pretty much really close to really what they were, especially in Plowboy's case, in Uncle Elmer's case. That was really him. Hillbilly Jim. Not quite so much, but he was still a genuinely fun and really likable guy to always be around.
And Hillbilly Jim was on the episode of Primetime Wrestling where you came your first official WWF appearance.
Yeah. I remember that.
Sitting across the table. Yeah, but Hillbilly Jim, 2018.
Hillbilly Jim and Gorilla Monsoon was there, and Vince was there, and Bobby the Brain Heenan brought me out, right?
Yeah, Bobby the Brain Heenan. He had the throne waiting for you, and now Hillbilly Jim. He has his own XM radio station.
Yeah, he actually played one of my songs off of one of my CDs not too long ago. Somebody sent me a picture of XM or Sirius Radio, and there on the screen it was said, I think he played, I don't know if he played Bad News or whatever, but anyway, played the song, and there was on the screen, Jerry the King Lawler, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But then I thought, if one of my songs gotten in the regular playlist, and then somebody also texted me or tweeted me that Hillbilly Jim has his own radio show, and that he played that song as part of a show where he featured different wrestlers that had made records over the years.
Well, there you go, Hillbilly Jim. Doing his thing. Yeah, so it's
congratulations, Hillbilly Jim. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool to have two guys in the class of 2018 with Jeff Jarrett and Hillbilly Jim having the Memphis roots.
Yeah, the Memphis connection there. Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's a nice do you remember? All right, here's another do you remember? This question pops up a lot, and I know we teased about doing a USWA show about the whole ordeal that went down to the lawsuit. So we're not going to get into that whole ordeal.
That could be spread over 5 shows. Yeah. Believe me.
So we're going to just go into the topic of King. Do you remember why the USWA stopped taping live studio shows?
Okay, it goes back to whatever year you said a few minutes ago about USWA being formed. That company being formed. Along with the group out of Texas, and I can't remember exactly what year it was formed, but it went up until about 1996 or something like that. But the USWA was formed before either Jerry Jarrett or I started with the WWE. But then in about '93, when Jerry and I both started working with the WWE. We started paying less and less attention to, not necessarily paying less attention to it, but it just, our time was divided between keeping the USWA afloat and also spending a lot of our time working in WWE. So I had a friend, this guy that I had met named Larry Burton. And Larry Burton was... And the way I actually met him, I remember being at a show in I think Detroit, Michigan, and he was friends with a baseball umpire who was at the show, and the umpire was backstage, and he had Larry backstage with him, and he introduced me, and all of a sudden Larry Burton says, "You and I have a mutual friend," and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Well, it was Andy Kaufman," and I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, I used to work with and be friends with all the cast of the TV show Taxi." And he said, "I'm still real good friends with Jeff Conaway and a bunch of the people from Taxi. And I used to work he actually lived in out near Hollywood in Orange, California. And he said, I still, I'm good friends with Jeff. And he said, here's something I'm going to tell you, a piece of trivia that you probably didn't realize. And he said, you remember when Andy sent you the clips of him in front of a swimming pool, and he had this big girl that he brought out on the screen, and he wrestled her down and said, she's a lot bigger than you, Lawler. And then he wrestled her down to the ground. And I said, sure, I remember that. And he said, well, that was my swimming pool in my backyard. And he said, I shot that video for Andy with my little handheld camera.
Oh, wow.
And I said, no kidding. And so anyway, we started talking and became kind of friends and stuff over the year. The next time, not long after that, I was out in California. He picked me up at the airport and showed me around. I mean, took me to this guy was very impressive. He took me to the Walt Disney Studios. We drove into which I was just in awe getting to go inside the Walt Disney Studios. He drives right up to the gate, and we're in this convertible Mercedes of his, and he just drives up the gate, and they said, hey, Mr. Burton, go ahead, Larry. And we just drive right through, and we go into this office building, go up an elevator to like the third floor or something, and we get off, and all of a sudden there's this big door of the office of Roy Disney. And I'm going, holy crap, this is the real deal. And then right across the hall was this guy's office named Mitch Ackerman. And Mitch was like the really big wheel at Disney, right under Roy Disney, and he was really good friends with this Larry Burton guy. So we go in, and he introduces me to Mitch, and this may have been one of the places that his office made such an influence on me that it's made me. Glenn, you've been to the room where I keep my Batmobile and all the Superman and the big Hulk and all of the memorabilia and stuff, right? Well, I have a room that's just cram-packed full. Every inch of it is full of different kind of Superman or superhero or Batman or Coca-Cola or sports, Cleveland sports, all of this memorabilia that I've collected over the years. Well, that's the way this Mitch Ackerman's office was. Every inch of it was covered in Disney memorabilia, and it was just the coolest thing. And I'm sitting there, and so all of a sudden Larry Burton says, hey, Mitch, can you believe this Jerry Lawler? He comes all the way out here to wrestle, and he gets out here, and he forgot his crown, which I really had. And he said, can you, and that was the reason we'd gone to the Disney studio. He said, let me take care of this. So he said, do you have in the props department, do you have a crown or something that he could use tonight? And I'm going, no, that's okay. So anyway, he just gets on the phone. He says, send me a crown up here real quick. So like 5 minutes later, in comes this lady, and she's got this beautiful green crown in her hand, and it looked like it was worth no telling how much money or whatever. But anyway, he said, do you ever remember seeing the movie Darby O'Gill and the Little People? Which I had, as a kid, had seen this Disney movie. It was about leprechauns and that sort of stuff. And so anyway, this was the crown from that movie. And he said, here, take this with you. And I'm going, oh my God, no, I can't do that. But anyway, I'm going too long on this story about the USWA. But anyway, Larry Burton guy was just real impressive with all the people that he knew and everything he knew about Hollywood. And of course, being a part of the Andy Kaufman history and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, then not long after that, Larry comes to Memphis for a visit, and he sees our, he stays for like a week, and he sees our whole operation that we're doing here at our USWA and the Memphis office, and he sees how we're kind of running the thing. And at that time now, in like 1996, our USWA show, our show that we shot, or that we did live on Saturday morning, a 90-minute show every Saturday morning, and then we'd pare that down right afterwards to a 1-hour show, and we'd bicycle that 1-hour show around, as we had done for years, to Louisville, Nashville, Birmingham, Lexington, Evansville, all the different cities in our territory. They would get a 1-hour version of the show that we did live on Saturday mornings to show the following Saturday in all those cities, and then then we'd have the live matches go around the territory to follow those TV shows. But the one main live show that was the lifeblood of the company was our live TV show that we did every Saturday morning at Channel 5 there in Memphis. So also, I'm about to lose my voice here. I'm going to have to take a drink or something. But anyway, also, not only did we have our show on in Memphis and in those other cities, we also took that tape, and it was being syndicated at the time. We were on our TV show at that time in '96 was on 160 different stations around the country. Yeah, and in return, we would send them or satellite those people, those 160 stations. We would satellite them the show every single week, and they would air it. And in return, what we were supposed to get, or what we did actually get in return, was time. We would get minutes on the show, commercial time, so that we could then go out and sell or barter or whatever. But Jerry Jarrett and I were never we were always in the wrestling business. We weren't in the TV time selling business or anything. So what would usually happen was those 6 or 8 minutes of commercial time that belonged to us in all of those 160 shows around the country just went unsold, and the stations would then just put their own commercials in, or they'd put in a public service announcement or whatever to take up the time that we didn't utilize. And so and I realized it was dumb. Anyway, Larry Burton comes in and he sees how we're running this organization, and he says, "Man, you two country bumpkins," and never forget, that's what he always called me and Jerry Jarrett. He said, "You country bumpkins don't realize you're sitting on a gold mine here." He said, "Forget about having the little rinky-dink wrestling shows in Louisville and Evansville and everything. Your big money is in these commercial minutes in these 160 shows around the country that you're not selling. That's where you guys are idiots." And he was right in a sense, because it was just. But we were content in being in the wrestling business. So he comes up with the idea, and he says, "Would you guys want to sell this wrestling company?" And Jerry Jarrett had met Larry Burton, and there was a personality conflict right from the get-go. Jerry never really liked Larry Burton, didn't get along with him from the very start, and so he told me, I said, "Well, me and Jerry Jarrett are 50-50 owners," and I said I couldn't sell without Jerry agreeing to sell. So I went to Jerry. And we were, like I said, we were both now working primarily in the WWE and the USWA. We were just kind of barely keeping it afloat. And so Jerry said, "Well, you know what? I would be willing to sell." He said, "But I don't trust this Larry Burton guy." He said, I don't have a good feeling about him." And he said, "But if you do, and you want to do this," Jerry said, "Here's what I'll be willing to do. I'll sell you." Talking to me, he said, "I'll sell you, Jerry, my half of the business for X amount of dollars. And then you can if you want to, then you can sell the whole thing to Larry Burton." He said, "But I just don't," he said, "I don't feel like if you and I sell the company to Larry Burton that I'll ever get my money." He said, "I know if I sell half to you, I'll get my money, and then you can do whatever you want to with the entire business." So that's what finally went down. Jerry Jarrett sold me his half of the company. I then turned around and made the deal with Larry Burton, and he'd gone out and gotten himself a business partner who was going to be an investor in the deal to come up with like half of the money for the company. And so anyway, we started the purchase, and they started wiring me the money for the company. And
now, was this Mark Selker?
Mark Selker, yes,
Okay.
Mark Selker from Ohio, from Cleveland, as a matter of fact, and which I thought was ironic. But Larry Burton had a big tie-in with Cleveland too. He was originally from Cleveland, but was now living in Los Angeles. Right. So anyway, then these two guys, Mark and Larry, buy the USWA company from me, but they wanted me to stay on and help oversee running it. Because really all they were buying it for and all they were interested in was the commercial time that they were going to sell, throughout those 160 shows. So, and so this became a sweet deal for me. Excuse me. It became a sweet deal for me in the fact that nothing was really going to change for me. I was still going to stay and help run the company, get paid for that, still wrestle for them, get paid for that. Plus, I got paid for selling them the company. So it was for me, it was a good deal. Well, and that's what went down. So they sold them the company, and then they started being in charge of running the TV show there at Channel 5. And man, just a short few weeks went by, maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. And I may be wrong on the amount of time, but anyway, a short period of time went by. And all of a sudden, Mark Selker and Larry Burton got into this beef over, I think that Mark Selker felt that Larry Burton didn't pay as much of the money as Mark Selker did, something like that. And so Mark Selker then all of a sudden wanted out of the deal. And he came to the TV station with some legal papers where he was going to sue Larry Burton. Now, Mark Selker had never been around wrestling or wrestlers or anything like that. So I think he was a little scared of what he was going to stepping into here. And so he brought with him a armed process server, the guy that was going to hand Larry Burton this lawsuit saying that, that Selker wanted out of the deal. And just to be safe, I guess he felt like he should bring this guy that's carrying a gun on his hip, right? So that all went down. There was a big yelling, shouting match or whatever when the guy served Larry Burton with the papers between Larry and this Mark Selker, the new owners, and a lot of shouting and stuff, and quite a scene there in the TV studio that morning. And this was at the live television show taping. So the next day or the following Monday, I get a call from the station manager there at Channel 5 in Memphis. And he said, Jerry, he said, we have done business with you and Jerry Jarrett for 20 years, from 1977 to 1997, without so much as a handshake. And he said, we've never had one problem. He said, but these two new owners, he said, I don't know these guys from a block punt. And he said, and I can't have somebody coming in my TV station where I got 150 wrestling fans that I'm responsible for. I can't have somebody coming in here with a gun. And so he said, you can tell these guys that we're not going to do any more live TV shows. Wow. He said they can put a tape on, but no more live in the studio TV shows. And so, boom, right there. I mean, it went, that was on that Monday, the following week, there was no live TV show. And these guys had nowhere to make a tape, to do another show, to put on there. And so consequently, like that fast, they were out of business. And they had already bought the USWA from me. And I say they were out of business because when they didn't make that tape the following week to send around to all of these other TV stations and those 160 syndicated markets, that was it. They were done. And so they lost all the syndication. They lost all the TV markets in our territory because they couldn't furnish them a tape anymore, or a show. So then the big lawsuit ensued where this Mark Selker guy sued Larry Burton, and he sued me and claimed that, he wanted his money back. And so, man, there was this big lawsuit where and the scary thing was the case was moved from Memphis to Akron, Ohio, because Mark Selker was from Ohio and his father was an attorney. And so it was moved to federal court in Akron, Ohio, and it was a jury trial where the people there had no clue about the value of Memphis wrestling or what Memphis wrestling was even was what it was. They had never even heard of it. So, it just boiled down to me having to try to tell. And I'll never forget one of the things I said in court. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I said, this is what happened. Let me just give you a little scenario. If you had never been behind the wheel of a car in your life, if you had not one clue about how to drive a car, but you went across the street to this big Cadillac dealership and you didn't tell them you didn't know how to drive a car, but you bought a brand new Cadillac and they sold it to you and you went out of the showroom and you got behind the wheel of that car and you stepped on the gas and that thing surged across the street and you went head first, right into the side of a brick wall or a building, and you totaled that Cadillac, could you go back across the street and say, hey, I want my money back because I didn't know how to drive? Right? I said, and that's what happened here. I said, these two guys bought a perfectly good wrestling company that has been in business and never lost money, has been profitable for all the years that it was in business, and they didn't know how to run it. And they went in less than 6 months with the different things that they did. They were out of business, and now they're coming and wanting their money back. And so, fortunately, I won the case. They didn't get their money back or anything like that. But then, the attorneys that they had, they went on and they sued. They appealed it, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court with appeals. And then, when that didn't work, they sued me in bankruptcy court. And then anyway, the lawsuits and stuff went on for about maybe 7 years. 7 years I spent in court over the USWA. And so, but anyway, it finally, it all worked out to where I think the Mark Selker guy got a judgment against Larry Burton. But I don't think he ever got any money from him. I know I got a judgment against Larry Burton and never got any money from him either. But so that was, I don't even remember what the question was because I've had so many concussions. But that was what happened to the USWA.
And that's a shame because the USWA, had such a lineage, even in a short period of time in Memphis wrestling. And then you had, Power Pro. Later on, Power Pro Wrestling.
Then the Power Pro was a new company that sort of Randy Hale started up and was able to get because Randy had such good history with us and the people at Channel 5 knew him, and so they were able to get the show back on Channel 5 with Power Pro Wrestling.
Do you ever think of what happened if you didn't sell to Burton and Selker? If you and Jerry Jarrett kept the USWA under your umbrella?
No, I don't even really.
I mean, you got paid handsomely.
I never look back and say wonder what would have happened. I don't do that. I really don't. If I'm asked to say, can you speculate on what would have happened? Probably, it would have just continued on like we were going. And the cool thing, the reason that was able to stay afloat was because I had been personally featured as the main star there for all during that company's existence, and I never left completely to go to the WWE. Even though I did go, that was the deal when I did go in '93. That was the deal that was worked out with Vince at the time. Was, hey, come and work here in the WWE, but you also can continue to work in the USWA and continue to keep that afloat because. That at that time it had been decided that it would probably be a good place to develop new talent because all of the other companies, all of the other territories had fallen by the wayside by then.
So that's the story with the USWA, live studio tapings with the studio audience coming to a halt is because a guy came to the studio with a gun.
I don't think we've ever told that story before anywhere.
So people tuning in, that's that following.
I didn't even put that in my book back in 2000.
Wow. I mean,
because it was still, the legal case was still going on then.
Yeah. So people that were coming to the studio on a regular basis, I'm sure you had the regulars coming in, on Saturday morning for Saturday morning wrestling. And that following Saturday, there was none. I'm sure a lot of people speculated what was going on.
No, I mean it was not. It was not really all that behind the scenes stuff that was going on. Nobody really knew what happened. They were just, like you said, all of a sudden the Saturday morning wrestling that had been on for years and years there in Memphis wasn't there anymore, and it was not there for a while.
Yeah, wow. So I'm sure a lot of the hardcore wrestling fans that listen to the podcast would be surprised to hear that. And
they're going to be so excited to know that starting in April, just a few short weeks away, every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, which was always wrestling time in Memphis. That good old classic Memphis wrestling is coming back to TV. CW 30, Channel 30 here in Memphis, every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock with a brand new show. We're going back and showing, some of the great matches from the classic days of Memphis wrestling. Just did a show last weekend. Actually did 2 shows with Dave Brown. And Dave and I went back and looked at some of the most memorable things, especially some of the things, whenever I have a certain guest on, we'll go back and look at some of the most memorable things that happened involving that particular guest. And there were a lot of great, funny stuff with Dave Brown from all the way back to when he interviewed Adam West, that made a guest appearance on the wrestling show as Batman. And then brought it all the way up to the Power Pro days, and so that is going to be coming back to Memphis TV, and we're going to be working on like all those people that see us or that listen to us, like over in Seoul, Korea, South Korea rather. We're going to either start streaming the show on my website, which is kingjerrylawler.com. Or we are going to, this is kind of sort of in the works. I'm going to contact them. We're going to think about getting the show on the WWE Network as well, the Memphis Classic Wrestling Show.
That'd be great. Yeah, so people look forward to that. The website is almost complete. You guys can go on there. The King has to send me some photos of what he's going to be selling, and you guys can buy some merch, and King will have a pro wrestling tee store. Shirt store soon as well. So a lot of merch coming your way for all the Jerry Lee King Lawler fans out there.
Did you just say Jerry Lee?
No, I said Jerry Lee King Lawler.
Oh, okay.
So you ever thought about starting back your own promotion in Memphis?
Well, have we ever thought about it? Sure, we've thought about it.
Like recently.
Well, yeah. My son, Kevin, he's promoted a lot of shows in Memphis. The problem has always been that lack of TV. There's never been an opportunity to do and have a live show on Memphis TV. Now though, trust me, I've thought about this. Now that we have that time slot, we have that hour every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on Channel 30. Who's to say that somewhere down the road we couldn't, put a live wrestling show, not necessarily live, but maybe go out and tape a show. But the other thing that has just hobbled Memphis local wrestling is not having a venue. Once they closed the Mid-South Coliseum, there's never been a venue that would be conducive to having weekly or even monthly matches there. FedEx Forum's just too big, seats 20,000 people. You're not going to be able to use an arena that size on a regular basis. And there's not another venue in Memphis. That's part of the deal with the FedEx Forum, that no venue, no kind of an arena venue that would seat over 5,000 people would be allowed in Memphis. So we don't have that. They shut the Coliseum down, and there's just nowhere to go. And then if you're gonna have matches on TV, you're gonna have matches to try to sell tickets to live events, and there's just not really a place to do a regular live event here anymore.
You can do it at a local high school gym, Jerry.
Believe it or not, you can't. Local high school gyms, the city of Memphis and the county Memphis City Schools, Memphis County Schools now they're called. That's one of the things they won't allow, like a money making, something that you would sell tickets to that would make money for other than the school itself.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So that eliminates a ton of possible.
A ton of possibilities right there. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's the Minglewood Hall, but it's too expensive. Minglewood Hall is like I don't know. There's just times have changed. It's just not the same. I don't think you would be able to take a long time to build that audience again. That would be. And I think back in the days when Memphis was at its height and Channel 5 wrestling was the most watched thing on television, you got to realize there were like 4 or 5 channels at that time.
Yeah.
Now you got 1,000 channels.
It's crazy. Well, that would be something that would be nice to have, like a actual promotion. Not a rinky-dink promotion, but an actual respectable, great promotion for some people.
Well,
that
you know
go to
what,
each and every week.
Burt Prentice, my buddy Burt Prentice, that I wrestle for a lot, up in Jackson, Tennessee, which is just 75 miles from Memphis.
Right.
He just got a show on there on the local station there in Jackson, Tennessee. I think it's Channel 7 in Jackson, and they're taping a show every week at the Oman Arena, and the Oman Arena is awesome. It's just a miniature version of the Mid-South Coliseum. Looks just like the Mid-South Coliseum. You take a picture of it, and you couldn't tell them apart. But it seats about 7,000 or 8,000 people instead of the Coliseum would seat 11,500. But Burt is, he's promoting that now on a regular basis. Matter of fact, I'm going to be wrestling for Burt up in Jackson, and guess who's venturing down here for the rematch?
Oh, jeez. I don't know who.
James Ellsworth.
James Ellsworth? No.
He's coming to Jackson, Tennessee for the rematch, where I don't have to go up and wrestle him in his backyard. He's going to come down here for a match in Jackson at the Oman Arena. But so what you're talking about in doing a local show, it's probably still possible. I mean, Bert's being successful with it.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be because you see, like, Booker T has his own little promotion in Texas. I think the King should have a promotion.
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't know how much more I can spend. I'm stay so busy anyway. They just like, this Friday I'm wrestling in Henderson, Tennessee, for Kevin White and a group there that benefits. They have a yearly show, and all the proceeds go to the Carl Perkins Center there in Jackson, Tennessee, which is a great cause, and they always have a great turnout, a great event. Matter of fact, it was a year ago that's where I got my shoulder jacked up and knocked out of place. It's still bothering me to this day. But and then that's this coming Friday night. Then Saturday night, I'm wrestling for Burt Prentice in South Fulton, Kentucky, at the high school. There's going to be a big show there. Then of course Sunday we got live wrestling at the barbecue restaurant out in Cordova. Following week I'm wrestling in Ripley, Tennessee at the Ripley High School. Big show there. And then the next night, Dyersburg, Tennessee. So I don't even know when. I don't even know when you could do put a regular show. The other thing about the Memphis wrestling, it was our TV show you watched on Saturday morning, which everybody watched, 11 o'clock, and then you came to the matches, the live matches on Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum, and now Monday night is Monday Night Raw night. You'd be trying to promote a live event with basically local wrestlers going up against, the top show on cable television with all the WWE superstars. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, it's a great idea. Just logistically seems to be a logjam.
Yes.
All right, final Do You Remember before we wrap the show up? And this is from Eddie Austin, a good fan of the show.
No, I thought we were going to, we got on the subject. Did we ever talk a little bit about Paul Bearer?
No, we didn't. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
let's talk about Paul Bearer for a second, because it was just this is like the anniversary. How long ago? It was just
5
Paul
years.
just passed away.
Yeah, 5 years ago this week, Paul Bearer passed away. And I know we talked a little bit about...
I'm telling you, it doesn't seem like it's been that long ago, because I was actually, Paul and I did a little independent show together, and that was the last personal appearance that Paul did at a wrestling show. He and I were together on the show, and I'll find the pictures of he and I together, and I'll put it up on Twitter. But I could tell at that time he was not in good shape, and we were back in the locker room. It was just tough for him to get around. And he told me basically that night, he said, King, I'm just waiting to be with my wife again. And Paul's wife had passed away. And if you remember, he talked about it, his sons talked about it at the Hall of Fame. I think Paul Bearer died of a broken heart. He missed his wife so much after she passed away. That was just it for him. It was just a matter of time. And we did the show together, and like a week later, Paul passed away. and it was sad. I mean, he was such a great character. We had so much fun. Of course, like you said, I knew him all the way back from the days when he was Percy Pringle in the USWA, all the way up through the WWE, and we did some great stuff together. I mean, I got to have a casket match with Paul holding the urn on the outside against the Undertaker, and then later on, one of the I don't know, maybe the most infamous things that we ever did, that Paul and I ever did, was we on Monday Night Raw, we acted like, or they made it appear that they were going to a commercial break and coming back. JR threw to the break and coming back with an interview with Paul Bearer and I, and supposedly it looked like there was a slip up, and the cameras were kept rolling when we thought we were in commercial break, and what went on during that interview was just some really classic stuff. Are you going to try to find that and play that? It might be a little racy, some of the stuff that was said during that thing, but it'd be really funny to hear again.
Let's hear from it right about now.
Folks, we are anxiously awaiting this exclusive interview with the King and Paul Bearer.
So we got a few minutes now?
Could I get somebody to get me some water?
Good. At least my towel. These lights are hot.
Listen, come here, I want to ask you something.
Do what?
Come here, I want to ask you something.
Where's my Coke?
I don't know.
I thought I had a Coke.
Tell me about the deal before we go back. Tell me about what are you going to tell everybody about Kane? What's the deal?
I told everybody. You heard what I told them. I told the whole world he's my son. He is my son, Jerry. It's that simple.
Come on. So you're telling me
He's my son.
I can't. You're telling me.
You don't believe me.
No, you're telling me you nailed the Undertaker's mother.
Well, I nailed.
Yeah.
Well, no. Okay.
Tell me. Well, how did it
How
happen?
can I trust you?
I'll tell nobody.
I was 19 years old. I was an apprentice at the funeral home.
Right.
I went out one Tuesday night to the wrestling matches like I always did with my friends, had a few beers, coming to the funeral home, and there she was in this little Teddy outfit. I've never been, don't tell nobody, I've never been with a woman before at that point. I wasn't fat like I am now either. In fact, Jerry, I was kind of studly.
Oh, really? Right.
Yeah, I was. Well, anyway, I come through the door and she took me right there. Right there.
Where was on the embalming table or something?
No, on the kitchen floor.
Oh, no.
Yeah, on the kitchen floor of the funeral
Paul
home.
Bearer slips the salami to the Undertaker's mother on the kitchen floor.
In the kitchen
Come
of the
on.
apartment of the funeral home.
You swear to God.
I swear. It's the gospel truth. That's the way it happened. She took me, an innocent 19-year-old boy. I lost my virginity right there. It's true.
Paul Bearer buries his baloney in the Undertaker's mother's kitchen. Come on.
She was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming, and I heard some little feet coming down the stairs. It's a good thing I got up, because there was little Taker coming down the stairs. I stopped him just in time. If he'd have took 2 more steps, he'd have seen his mama's feet. One of them was in New York, and the other one was in L.A.
Can you imagine if little Undertaker had come in and seen Paul Bearer and his mother bumping uglies?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I mean, you know what? That is a perfect example of what we could get away with in the Attitude Era, and is certainly, certainly would not be able to air on the WWE TV shows these days. But that, once again, that's the cool thing about the network. I mean, all that stuff still lives. You can go and pull it up anytime, right? On the WWE network.
All that's on the network. All uncensored, unedited.
Uncensored, unedited. Everything is on the WWE network. Some really amazing stuff. But yeah, I really miss Paul Bearer. That was he was always a lot of fun to work with. This is just a really good guy.
My favorite, really quick, uncensored moment. I'm not sure this is on the network, but when DX was in the ring, and there was a female that had a Stone Cold tank top, and Triple H was telling her to take her top off, and the crowd was egging her on, and she took her top off, but she had a bra on. And Triple H was like, no, you got to take it all off.
Gosh, wait a minute.
And she showed her puppies to the whole
The puppies were
they were out, and you were going crazy. You and JR was sick. He was sickened by your reaction.
I'm sure JR was. He was just appalled. I would bet.
Yeah. I always wondered if that was actual like a plant. A hot girl in the crowd by herself, with the skimpy top on that Triple H can point out to rile the crowd up.
I can tell you this, definitely plants.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was such great TV at that time. That's why we had 7 and 8 million viewers for Monday Night Raw at that time.
Well, I don't think that made Raw. I think that was like an extra. That was like during commercial break or something. But somehow it got on YouTube. I mean, I'm not sure where. Maybe it was on the air. I don't know.
Trust me, some of that stuff was on the air, and it was the talk. Raw was the talk of, at the water cooler the next day. Everybody was watching, and especially college kids, watching that sort of thing. I mean, that was during the era when it was just a well-known fact on television. Sex sells. It always has. Times have changed now, and now it's everything is inclusive and equal. The more empowering women and that sort of thing, and it's not about that anymore. And that those days are gone. But in that era, that was the thinking, and that was what everybody was thinking back in that day. That was what sold, and that was at that time. We had. I mean, and who's to say what's wrong or right? Because at that time there were 7 or 8 million viewers for Monday Night Raw, and I remember the college kids would talk about going to a live event. Like you said, oh my gosh, I went to Monday Night Raw and girls in the audience were pulling their tops up. You think that didn't make more kids want to, the college kids want to go to the matches the next time?
No.
It's crazy.
As a teenage kid myself, I'd be like, hey, let's go to Raw. Dad, right. take me to Raw, Dad. Why do you want to go to Raw? Oh, girls are taking their top off. Okay, we're going.
Exactly.
But no, I always wondered.
It's a different day and time now.
I always wonder if those were, actual females that came to the show with a date or whatever, or that was were plants. I figured those were plants.
Well, you'd probably be right.
Yeah. That's great. All right, final question from Eddie Austin for our Do You Remember? And speaking of the guns coming to the studio, King, when you were the heel in Memphis, were there anybody waiting for you in the parking lot with a weapon or wanting to fight you after a show?
Oh, you know what? It was, that once again was a different era, and especially to go back a little further, there were a lot of times that fans would get so upset that they would want to fight. I did early on get actually a guy, I say stabbed. And this was the first when I was really just kind of getting started down in the Alabama, that little Alabama territory where, I mean, half the people that came were kind of backwoods farm people, and every one of them carried a pocket knife or something like that. And I did actually get a guy that tried to stab me, and it was a small pocket knife, and it did actually, I saw it come. I saw him lunging at me with it, and I backed up, and it still did, he made contact and it broke the skin, but it wasn't, I can't even actually say that I would be ashamed to say I was stabbed, because it just didn't, he tried to stab me, but it didn't get him, and the police got him. Another time I remember in Jonesboro, Arkansas, coming out after the show, we were wrestling at the American Legion Arena, and we would have to park behind the wrestlers would park behind the building there in just a dark area behind the Legion building. And I was coming out, going back to my car, show was over. All the police were, the security police were already gone. And I get to the back, and there were about 4 guys in the back standing over near my car. And I'm just watching them, and they're not, they're like saying a few things and everything. And then I put my bag in my back seat. And then I opened my front door, and then I look, and the one guy, they're maybe 20 feet in front of my car. and the one guy has a brick in his hand, right? And so he just like is raising his arm, and I stopped. You know, I didn't sit down in my car, and I stopped, and I said, I swear to God, if you throw that brick and hit my windshield, I swear to God, I will run over you and squash you like a bug. And you know what? At that time, I meant it. I mean, I was so, you know, I saw this guy was fixed to bust out my windshield, and I think that in the heat of the moment, I probably would have maybe run him over, right? And so I get in my car, I close the door, the guy rears back, fires the brick, busts my whole windshield, boom. I slammed my car into gear, and I jammed on the gas, and he turns and starts running, and my car goes bump, 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 bump. And I stop and I look, I put my car in park, I get out, all 4 of my tires were cut.
Wow.
So that was like the worst thing I ever had. And the funny part of it made it even worse. The police got the guy. Somebody told who had cut the tires and bust my windshield. And so I had him prosecuted. And I went all the way back over to Jonesboro, Arkansas, and went to court. And they had the guy there in court. And so anyway, they had the guy in court. And so they had this guy sitting there in court. And the judge, you know, we go over what happened, and the police tell what happened. And then the judge said, well, Mr. Lawler, you know, how much was it to replace the windshield? And I said, like, I don't know, $200. And then how much were the new tires? And I said, they were like $400. And he said, okay, I don't know if he had said like judgment against the plaintiff or whatever for $600, right? And that was the fine or whatever. And so then boom, he hits the gavel, and so the guy has to pay $600, right? And so I go out with the lawyer, and I said, well, does he pay me, or how does that work? And he says, no, that's his fine. He just pays the court.
What?
And I said, yeah, that's what I said. I said, what? I said, what about my tires and my windshield? And he said, oh, well, you'll have to sue him in whatever kind of court to get that money back.
Civil court?
Yeah, civil court.
Oh
So needless to say, I never did. But anyway, yeah, that's just some of that stuff. The fans used to really get they used to really get upset one time. One time coming out of the match, I can look down and see it right now. There it is, right there, on my left bicep is where a woman reached, and all she did was just as I was going past there in the Louisville Gardens after the match, they were so mad, and this woman just reached out, and she had these long nails, and she just grabbed my arm and just clamped down on my arm and just scratched, and you can see scarred. I mean, the blood just started pouring out of my arm. Just she still left those 4 claw prints in my arm that have been there the rest of my life. But yeah, people used to get upset, and we didn't always have that great a security.
Wow. So people busting out your window and tires, that sucks. And people trying to stab you sucks.
Yeah.
But I figured there'd be more incidents when it comes to jerk, because you were a good heel back it was still are, but I mean,
yeah, well, you know what, it was also, though, I think that was the start of the time where fans were starting to look at, especially in my case, they were starting to kind of look on you as being a cool, if you were a good heel, it was almost kind of cool, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, even as far as when I started, I loved the heels. You know, I liked the bad guys. I, of course, was a big fan of Jackie Fargo, but I loved the Blue Infernos, which was the guys that fought against Jackie Fargo, and I loved, a lot of the bad guys. I just thought they were the coolest, you know. So I think that helped me a lot. But I never had an incident involving a gun or anybody trying to threaten to shoot me or anything like that, you know. Any
fans like coming to your house and try to maybe maybe like not stalkerish fans, but fans coming to your house to have a word with you or try to get in your face or anything like that?
No,
Never. That's good.
One time back during the big height of the thing, I did come home when I lived in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I come home and I had a broken window. And I thought, man, there's some fan has come out here and done this. And then come to find out, guess who had come to my house while I was out of town and broken my window?
Bill Dundee.
No, Randy Savage.
Oh, Randy Savage.
Yeah, and they filmed it. They came out. It was like this was back when we were fighting against him and his dad and his brother Landy. They had a company up in Lexington, Kentucky, and we were going head to head. They were like our opposition, and so when on a day when I was out of town, he had come and they brought their camera crew, and it was like the WWE invading WCW. They knew I wasn't at home, but they come driving up into my yard and everything. I found out later, and they took this back and showed it on their TV of him. Hey, Lawler, I know you're in there. Lawler, you're in there. Boom, and he breaks one of my windows. So.
Did they even? I mean, hopefully they paid you for the window, right?
No, never did. But we've wound up. I mean, not too long after that. They kind of more or less went out of business, and we wound up having the big match there in Lexington, the loser league town. And of course, he started working for the WWE, so we had our big match in Lexington. That was the two companies going against each other, where it was the big blow off of what had been built up as a shoot. I mean, I think he once punched Bill Dundee at a rest stop or at a restaurant somewhere when they came cross paths one day just out in public, So some of that kind of stuff would happen between the companies. But then finally we had the big match, and I won the loser leave town match there out of Lexington, and then Randy went on to WWE, and he came back to Memphis. We worked a bunch of matches there together.
Any final word, King, before we wrap it up for this week?
Man, we should have had a lot of final words. This has been long again, right?
Yeah, because the USWA thing lasted forever.
Yeah, it did. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's a good story. It deserves its own. I think it deserves its own little, more of a condensed.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah, the condensed version is great, but I think it deserves its own, one or two shows. But
I could go into detail.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted. That was one of the most requested story is how come the USWA stopped the live show, so people can finally rest with the answer for this week's show.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. 1 year anniversary of the podcast. We'll be back next week. Happy 1 year anniversary to the podcast, but also happy 1 year anniversary to here at the barbecue restaurant.
Yeah, everybody come on out this Sunday, March the 11th. It looks like it may rain a little bit on Saturday. But on March the 11th, on Sunday, it's like a 20% chance of AM in the morning showers. Then it's going to clear off and be a beautiful day. And we're going to be out here starting at noon. We're going to have some live wrestling, probably starting around 2 or 3. And it's going to be a fun day. Come join us.
Are you wrestling?
I'm wrestling.
Who are you wrestling?
I think Dangerous Doug Gilbert.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah, will we?
All right. We'll talk to everybody next week. Let us know where you're listening to the podcast from. Send us a photo at Dinner with King. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on all the podcast platforms. And like each and every week, we appreciate you guys listening and interacting with us.
And you know, Glenn, we're getting close to spring break time, so I'm sure somebody will send you a picture listening on the beach.
I think someone did. Someone texted me a photo where they listened to the show.
Oh, really?
Earlier.
Awesome.
I can't say what it was, but I think someone earlier.
Well, tweet it out. Put it out on Twitter.
I'll tweet it out. We'll talk to everybody next week here on Dinner with the King.
The preceding show is a Pod Avenue production.